Vani Tripathi Tikoo, thank you so much for speaking to us on Times Now's Turning the Page, and many congratulations on your very first book. It's called Why Can't Elephants Be Red? And this is a book meant for children, but it has a certain resonance and a certain significance that goes beyond simply the contents of the book, because you've written it with a very important purpose that is unfortunately missed when it comes to the kind of books that have typically come out in the past and that our children have been exposed to. So let's talk about this a bit further. You've actually worked a lot with children when it comes to the National School of Drama. What was your motivation behind actually penning your thoughts and writing a book exclusively meant for children as your very first book? Tell us a bit more about the thinking behind this.
Thank you for that, and thank you for all the kind comments. It almost feels like you're sitting in my head right now, and you're exactly saying what I probably meant to say. So, full marks to you for the amazing level of understanding that you've created, after reading the book and, speaking to me. First, I would say that, my work at the National School of Drama started with a theatre education company, which was a very unique experiment done almost 35 years ago when Barry John became the director of this new vertical of NSD at that time. And we started paying attention to working with children. Now, what tends to happen is when we say children's theatre, it's very simply a script is picked up, animal farm is picked up, they are made to mug up the script, and then they spew it out, and that becomes a performance. So we devised a methodology which was almost long 27 years of hit and trial work, where we started with the grip theatre movement from Berlin, where the first rule was no fantasy. And when we said no fantasy, it made our life miserable and not easy, because all that we could see was very big productions done with children, the Raja Rani ki kahaniyan, the fairy tales, and so on. So if you will look at my theatre training, I'm the last batch of students of Sri Ibrahim Al-Qazi. Obviously, so I'm a method actor, but if you were to look at my work at the National School of Drama, I chose to work in the theatre education company because I always thought that very little attention is paid to working with young minds. And what we end up doing in the process of becoming adults is we forget our childhood. So the first journey that we used to take, even before devising a play, and I will tell you what devising a play is, there is zero written work. So you work for weeks and months together with children, and you create a kind of an ecosystem where they themselves become the story. So in so many ways, it was cathartic for children. In so many ways, role play is problem solving. When Sumit becomes Sumita, suddenly he loses the context of the self and he becomes somebody else, and all the problems come out. Similarly, with our scholastic system and our parental, guidance system all over the country, I would rather say it's a global context. We've been peddling utopia to children. We've been peddling fairy tales, kingdoms, kings, queens. It has nothing to do with their everyday life. It doesn't even give any sense of any semblance of reality. So this book had a twofold journey. One is the title of the book, Why Can't Elephants Be Red? That was my last play at the National School of Drama, which is called Lal Lal Hati. So many of my seniors from NSD, known people, like Nawazuddin Siddiqui, still have not my name is Vani Tripathi on their phone, they still call me Lal Hati. So the play was about a little kid who was Pisaddi, not very good in studies, but was very good in art. And one day this child goes and paints a red elephant on a large canvas in school. So the art teacher gets a little wild at him and says, what is this nonsense? Now this is a bit much. Elephants are either black, grey, or they're sporadically white. There can never be a red elephant. So the child forges a very firm but a polite debate with the teacher, and he says, your elephant is black, but mine is red. What is your problem with that? And I, of course, burst out of a school bag and I play the Lal Hati, and then starts this fun and introspective and all kinds of journey that the child takes with the red elephant. So this was an ode to, the memory of that play, which still remains very fresh in the minds of, many, many people, many children who are now adults. So many times on Twitter, they would write to me and say, "Man, we remember you from Lal Aati." And you know what? We took that play away and that became a changed reality for us in our lives. The other journey is the pandemic. I was with my mother in Delhi, and for almost 2 years, my 2.5-year-old child who was in Singapore with my in-laws and my husband couldn't see me. Singapore shut down, everything was under lockdown. I took the virtual journey of these 12 stories of these 12 amazing characters who are real people. Bade Papa is my brother-in-law, Meenu Mama is my bhabhi, and so on. So I started to think many years ago that we are scared of realistic writing for children in India. And this is my attempt, and this is my first step to raise this debate. Why are we scared as adults to write realistic stuff for children, where what is most important for them is their everyday life? Maximum amount of hours they spend is in school. The weekend they spend at home, they are either doing their homework or they are under tremendous pressure in growing up here under the peer pressure or the whole sense of competition that we create around them. So this book is very much that journey that we as adults need to go back to the sense of childhood we have lost. And I rather say children are those gurus who save us from perils of adulthood.
So, very interestingly, the debate in India, especially about when it comes to teaching your kids or writing books for your kids, is centered around whether or not they ought to be reading fairy tales or whether they ought to be reading something that is rooted in Indian culture. So, whether that's a depiction of the Ramayana or the Mahabharata for kids, that's where invariably you end up seeing the debates happen, not whether or not the books that they read ought to be rooted in reality. So you're right to that extent that this is perhaps an opportune time to begin that debate. But you chose a very serious subject, which is, of course, COVID-19 and the entire pandemic and the experiences that your daughter, Akshara, went through at that point in time. And of course, you were not with her during some of those difficult days because you had to take care of your mother, you had to stay back here in India. How has your daughter internalized that experience of separation? And what kind of, when another kid perhaps reads a book like this, uh, would they be able to empathize? Or is that the purpose? Is there an attempt here to have children in India as well relate to an experience of this nature so that it helps them in their own way in their upbringing?
Very interesting question. Frankly, Siddharth, I'm not really looking for empathy. I'm looking for a sense of relationship. And I'm already telling you the kind of reviews which are pouring. I'm already telling all my friends and people who I know who picked up the books for their children. 7-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, even 17-year-olds have already written back and said, some call it quirky, some call it quintessential, some say exactly what happened to us. But what's most important for me is that the wide-eyed amazement of a child's mind at the adult world is what I really wanted to capture. If you carefully notice even in the chapter Tutu Mas, I don't want to let out too much, let people read the book. She's having fun with the fact that too many people are wearing two masks, not one mask. So
Yeah, in Singapore,
I'm
yeah,
not
that's
taking a
correct.
morose, I'm not taking a morose, view of what COVID-19 and the pandemic did to us. And also, everything is realistic. I would be very true to say this to you that every single incident in the book, every single story is real time story. I
Mm.
haven't fabricated anything, and this is how she is. She used to sing about Tutu Mas. She used to sing about a crab in a tub in a food court in Singapore and not in the sea. And it's a very valid question. Why is this poor chap crawling in a tub? He should be actually swimming in the sea. Mama, didn't you tell me that crabs belong to the sea? So, you see, also, we have to treat children like intelligent human beings. Why either we talk down to them, shut up, or we are like, ooh, how are you doing today? Choo, 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 choo. They are actually extremely well thinking human beings. So we also have to learn to behave with them as humans, as people. I call them little people. They are little people around us. One very important thing you asked in the question, how did she internalize it? Frankly, she's an awesomely tolerant kid. I am amazed. This is my first child. I did not understand, despite my whole world being children for so many years, till it doesn't happen to you, you don't realize. I'll just tell you a little incident which I haven't really shared much with people. So, in all of these 1.5 years, I got a 14-day window to go somewhere else and at least see her. So, her father brought her to that one, country. And obviously, on the 14th day, I was back to square one. I was full of emotion. It was like a holocaust for me. I did not know when the next time I'm going to see her. Also, the vaccine I had taken did not have a WHO approval. But I will say that Covaxin, the vaccine I took, I'm still alive because of that. Because what I see in Delhi with the kind of raging, pandemic around us, it was a horror time. So I'm like crying and howling, and like an adult, she turns around because she's supposed to now leave, and I'm not leaving with her because she's going to Singapore, and I will turn away and go back to India. And she says to me, "Why are you upset? You're looking after my nani, right? You're going to give her khana, you're going to feed her medicine, and you're going to come back. What's the big deal?" And Siddharth, I just kept looking at her. Of course, I stopped. And I just thought that this 2.5-year-old kid has suddenly become a big adult mind for me. And she gave me strength. Let me tell you, writing this book also kept me sane. I had allocated 2 hours every morning to write this. Otherwise, everything was looking so morose around me. I was literally living each day not knowing what will happen tomorrow. And this is the kind of uncertainty we face. So a lot of children have said to me, lockdown was the first time they also realized what families meant. You see, remember that as children are growing up, they want their space, their communication with adults around them becomes frugal, not just because they don't want to talk. Now that's also a misnomer. Children want to share so much. We are the ones who sometimes shut them out. Also, the pressures of exams, competitive sort of relationships, how they are doing in school, how they are not doing in school becomes such a big issue that communication lines become weak. So one of the things is when we work with children and we work with young people at the Techno Education Company, even today at the National School of Drama, we start with the self. And that is exactly what this book is. It's the self of a 2.5-year-old and her amazed view of the adult world around.
Uh, since this is a children's book, how difficult was it, ma'am, for you to actually write this? How much of this is your imagination, and how much of this is also, in some ways, a recollection of the conversations that you might have had with your daughter on FaceTime or on Skype at a time when you were disconnected with her? Of course, there was no physical contact, but you were in India and she was in Singapore. So, how much of this is your own imagination, and how much of this is a recounting of the experiences that you had with your daughter from a distance, of course, at a time that you were in India and she was separated from you in Singapore?
None of it is imagination. These are all real time incidents. So, first few weeks, I held back and kept myself on mute because I wasn't sure how traumatic it will be for her to, see me from a distance. And because she goes to bed with me, she sleeps with me. This was a routine with the both of us till this separation happened. Uh, but let me tell you that the interesting part is I don't know how good or bad this technique is. The way I'm speaking right now is the way I write because I'm intrinsically a storyteller. I'm an actor by training, and I always tell people we are a land of kathavachaks. Every nook and corner has a katha, has a story in it. So frankly, Siddharth, for this one, it really wasn't difficult because my mind races like a bullet train when it comes to storytelling. You know, Today also, every night, I tell her a new story. It's not sometimes, most days, it's story read out of a book. But there are times when she says, Mama, now today I want you to tell me a story. And that is a bit of a surprise and a shock at that time. At 8:30 p.m., you're tired with your whatever of the whole day, but yet, the mind doesn't tire. The point is, we have to start living our lives creatively with children. Everything else follows suit. One more observation I want to make, Siddharth. This 1.5 years of being without you taught me what lazy parenting should not be. What tends to happen is we can constantly scream about screen time with children, whether they are young or whether they are older. It's very easy to give this thing in the hand of a kid and say, okay, 20 minutes over now, the screen time is done. The child will turn around and when they ask you, Dad, Mom, you even take your phone to the loo. This is what most adults do. I was just reading the research. You're controlling my screen time. So again, it all comes back to the self. You have to start spending creative time with the child. So what I started to do on a FaceTime, I would pick up a paper and I would draw with her. And she still has the same habit. The moment she's back in school, she picks up a big drawing book, and the first thing she does is draw. Or I would sing a song with her, or I will tell her a story. One more thing I did, since schools were open in Singapore and nothing was shut here, despite the fact the borders were shut, I started doing storytelling sessions for a classroom. And then it became a very interesting exercise for me. I could see her in class, which I couldn't physically, so it was a clever thing to do. I could see children around her, and I immediately got response time for the story that I was telling. I did about long 3 or 4 or 5 sessions through the year, in a class, which was all virtual. Everything was anyway virtual. So, frankly, um, this one was not a difficult one, Siddharth, because I think it was all in my head. It was just flowing really fast, and all of it came out on paper quickly. But full marks to my publisher, Yogi Books, for the gorgeous illustrations they did on the book. The illustrations are also all real people. They look
Yes,
exactly the way
illustrated by
they look
Rupak
in these
Niyogi. In fact, the
photographs.
illustrations are they complement the text very well, no doubt about it.
Yeah, yeah. And they are all real people. So the swimming pool picture is a real one in foreign photos. I shouldn't say too much. But they are all real people. The characters are all real people and they look exactly the same. We've only tweaked, a little bit of this or that. I mean, the illustrator and Rupak has done such a great job. So I'm also saying stories don't need to be complicated robotics. Stories can be very simple things that children go through every single day. How heavy a school bag is or isn't, how good a book is or isn't, how much of a interest a particular merging of a color, a blue with an orange, would mean for a kid is very simplistic storytelling. But what? It's so simplistic for us in our adult minds that we mostly forget that it's so imperative and important for children. And that's just one of those small things I've tried to attempt to write and speak about in the book.
So, the entire idea of why can't an elephant be red, that is also to kind of give wings to a child's fertile imagination and not necessarily restrain them mentally, at least in their formative years. But taking that and transposing that to a situation where we have the education system that we have in this country, what are your observations? I mean, do you believe that parents today, at least in an urban upbringing, as well as schools, are inhibiting these mental capacities of children? They're not allowing their imagination to actually run wild as it's supposed to, at least in their initial years. Are they trying to kind of place caveats and restrictions in the way their children can think? And do you believe some of those fears are justified or are they completely unjustified?
What an interesting question. You've actually unleashed the Pandora's box. The long journey we took, for more than 3 decades. One of the other things we started in the tech and education company, Siddharth, is we started doing capacity building work for teachers and parents. Why blame the parents? Because they are also victims of the same societal pressure, the same surroundings, and the same kind of ecosystem that the child is, bearing as a burden. The beast of burden is not just the child, it's also the parent. So what we started to do is, initially they were they were cringy about the methodology we used to talk about. So what we started doing, we started talking about nothing but a methodology. We started actually doing workshops that we used to do with children exactly the same way with them. And you know, when a 45-year-old gentleman suddenly became a 5-year-old, actually, in role play, that is where it all opened up. So with the new education policy, I do say that there is a certain level of understanding which will get created if drama becomes a elective subject in most schools, and full marks to the government for that. Also, a lot of experts of the Tibetan Education and National School of Drama for many years have worked with NCRT and so on. But you see, what tends to happen is drama theater is seen as a side hobby. It's never seen as a mainstream subject that a child can do, and that is where we suffer. I'm not saying drama is a therapy for everything. So is music, so is dance, so is art, and so is things like caricature making. But the point is, everything becomes extracurricular, and the elective curricular becomes the elective curricular. So I think the first change would be if we are able to unleash the understanding or the collaboration between liberal arts and education per se. Till we will not do this marriage properly, it will remain an issue because, frankly, we have to unbox the mind. The computer on which you and I are speaking, the screen is a square, the blackboard is a square, the book is a square, the table and the chair is a square, everything is a box. So to unbox it, we have to move out of the parameters of these four corners that we have, excuse me, boxed ourselves in. But then it's a tumultuous and a very long process because you cannot expect the parents to become rebellious overnight. And I'm not talking about rebellion at all. Why I'm saying this, Siddharth, initially everybody thought Tibetan education was about a revolution. No, we were not attempting a revolution. We were only trying to create, and I'm saying this very carefully, rounded spaces around the corners. We have to just create a little bit of rounded spaces around these corners. Children cannot stop going to school. They will not stop being competitive. The result will not stop playing the most important role in their lives because everything is connected. And India is a very pro academics country. You know, it's all about how much grade you got. It's all about which college will you go to. I know it's like the same all over the world, but there are so many other countries where physics and music can be taught and learned together. So I think early days, yes, but I wouldn't lose hope. I'm an eternal optimist because that is what children teach you. They teach you eternal optimism for life. If the new education policy right now in toto comes about, in fruition, I think it will be celebration time for. I don't call myself a teacher; I'm a facilitator. So for facilitators like me, it will be celebration.
A final question, Ms. Tiku. Where do you now see yourself going with this? Uh, this is, of course, the start of something very significant. It's been written with a certain purpose. So, Why Can't Elephants Be Red, of course, has a lesson. And it's about also teaching our children or having them grow up with an experience of reading stuff that is rooted in reality. So, what next is my question, because this has to mean something in order to take it forward. How do you plan to take it forward?
So when we started this whole work with children and capacity building and all that, we realized that we cannot be just stationed in Mandi House in New Delhi and go on yapping. We travel the world. So right now I'm really traveling the world. I mean, as you and I speak next week, I'm in Mumbai and then Chennai and Pondicherry. And before the schools shut down for the summer break, I'm going into schools apart from the launches that I'm doing. The Delhi launch is very big. I was very fortunate that somebody who I consider almost a mentor in cinema, Paresh Rawalji, and he actually picked up the same chapter, which is my favorite chapter, which is about how a child actually, how Aku, I mean, we call Akshira Aku. paint the elephant red, in the class.
Yeah.
So I'm traveling with the book, but if you will read the last story, it ends at a certain cliffhanger. So the
Yeah, yeah.
second one is almost
Going
ready
to
in my.
school, yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, going to school. So the next should be the escapades of the school, and that should be extremely exploratory and full of inquisitiveness and inquiry. Um, but yes, this debate I'm going to take far and wide. I'm going to use every possible medium, digital, non-digital, physical, scholastic. I'm going to travel to many, many, many states of the country. And also there will be something in Singapore because Singapore is also a large part of the book where I want to ask the adults, why are you scared to write slash buy books which are realistic writing for children? And similarly, another big passion of mine is creating content for children which is realistic. So somewhere in a corner is this wish list that I want to tell a few stories, whether as a web series or whether as a series of films. I'm not talking about just one film. There's so many plays children gave me in these last 30 years, millions of stories devised by them, amazing plays written, frankly, almost directed by them. We were just facilitators, as I said. All those stories need to be told because they are about their lives, they're about their dreams, they're about their fears. Another one big, large area which we completely shove under the carpet is the fear of a child. It's not just the fear of darkness and a dinosaur or a ghost. There are so many inner fears a child has which doesn't come out. So I do see this as a long journey and I'm ready to put as much time and space. If I've invested almost 3 decades of my life doing it, then I think the next few years I should be doing this for now.
Okay, many congratulations once again. And on a personal note, it also actually brought back my own memories of not having spent a childhood in Singapore, but I did spend a part of my adolescent years in Singapore. So when you describe as exhaustively as you do the Newton Food Court, it's very evocative. So congratulations
Oh,
once
thank
again.
you so
And
much. That is a big surprise. To that I'm going to take Akku tonight. That you have one more buddy who is in Delhi, in India, and is actually knows the Newton Fort as much as you do. Thank
I
you
do,
so
and
much,
I spent a lot
Siddharth,
of
and I'm
time at
very very
Newton
grateful.
Food Court. There was a place there, a small food stall that used to sell murtaba, as it's called.
Yes,
Uh,
it still
yes,
does. It still does.
yes.
As you and I speak outside my window, I can actually see the Newton Food Court. I live exactly opposite Newton Food Court right now.
Wonderful. Wonderful,
So
ma'am. So,
thank you.
congratulations once again. I wish you all the success for this and all the very best to your daughter Akku Akshara as well. And hope this is the first of many more to come.
Thank you so much, and I'm so grateful and deep gratitude for the inner mechanizations of the book, coming out so well. And you have an extremely creative mind. Maybe Siddharth, there is an author lingering in you, which probably needs some kind of, representation. Maybe that I would just bless you with that. Maybe that reflection will also happen one day. Thank you
Well,
so much.
Well, thanks for your best wishes. I hope that comes to fruition. And thanks for your participation in the show. And we look forward to many such more conversations, ma'am. Thank you very much.